Let's talk about planning your space. Today, I am very excited to go over with you how to plan your interior space. Now, I am not going to use the tools that I would typically use. So typically, I would use something like AutoCAD to lay out a space. But this video is for you guys, and this is for the person who wants to design their own space and lay it out and actually have it come together, and when they go out and buy furniture, that the furniture actually fits. I want to make this video as easy as possible for anybody to lay out their space. You do not need AutoCAD to do this. This is going to be the very hands-on version. So you're going to need some paper, a pencil, a ruler, something to measure, whether you have a laser measure, you probably maybe don't, that's okay. A ruler, like a measuring tape, not a ruler. Measuring tape will be fine, and I will go over exactly what we need to measure in the space first and then how to lay it out. Now I'm going to lay it out on my tablet. So you can use just an iPad. It has a grid paper. I'll go over all of that soon with you guys. So I'll be doing it on my tablet just because it's already got grid paper. You can also use actual lined grid paper, and I'll show you exactly with the tablet how to do that. Or you can just create your own, which I'll also give you a quick how to do that as well. It's a little bit more time consuming, but totally doable if all you have is, paper and a ruler and some pencils. So you don't really need much. Paper, pencils, measuring tools, and you too can get this all going for your space. All right, guys, let's dive in to measuring up this space and exactly what you need to do to get it done right. All right, so the first measurement that I want to do is figure out my length and width. Now, I have a fairly open concept space, so I have to think about where the natural break point of this space would be. So for me, I have this opening that goes into our private spaces over here, so I'm going to use that as my natural division line for my living room. If you have a closed-in living room, then you don't have to worry about this as much. But if you do have an open space, that's something that you have to consider is which zone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by measuring from this wall over to this wall. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle on my notepad to start writing down my rough layout of the space so that I can note all of my measurements. This doesn't have to be perfect. Just use a sketch piece of paper and, get it all down as kind of messy or as tidy as you can. It's really up to you. So 15 feet 5 inches is my width. I've just written down very rough. The next measurement that I need to get for this space is this length here. So by using this natural break in the wall that I've mentioned, I'm going to measure from that opening over to the windows. And of course, the fireplace and windows is a little bit trickier, but we'll get into all that as well. So I'm going to measure this length with my laser measure. Okay, so the next measurement that we have to take is basically this whole front area. There are certain things in a space that will, obviously your eye will gravitate towards. This fireplace would be one of them because it is a focal point in the space. It's natural for us to think about that when we're placing furniture, to think about what's our focal point. Sometimes it might be a giant window, sometimes it might be a fireplace, sometimes there might not be any natural, guided focal point, so you might have to think about that a little bit. Where do you want to face, have conversations, all those type of things are really important when laying out your space. So now we're gonna go measure up the windows and the fireplace and put them on our drawing. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a quick note sketch, nothing fancy, on my notepad as to where the windows are roughly and roughly where the fireplace is so that I can add all my dimensions on there. Okay, some of the notes that I've put on here is just showing where the windows are, the fireplace, and then the other window, which I'll just measure up. And then also to note, there is actually an opening here, and I do want to note that just because there isn't actually a wall here. So I want to make sure that I'm thinking about that, as well as, I guess this is kind of open as well down here because I'm just measuring to that thing. So this is open as well. So just to keep in mind like where those break points are, but that there aren't actually walls. So I really only have this wall and then this. And then this is fairly open with that one little wall with the stairs that you saw. So for this area, I'm actually just going to use a measuring tape. It's easier for some of the weird kind of corners and stuff. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. If you are thinking about placing a couch underneath a window, you will want to measure your sill height because you'll want to know where your sill height is, which is this part right here, in relation to the back of your couch. So that's something sometimes that you need to think about, but I don't want to get too technical on you guys. So basically, just noting where they are is a good start. Okay, so I have measured my length. So I know that to here is 16 and whatever, 16, 11 inches. So I'm just gonna measure back from that point and it will all make sense at the end. I'll show you. All right, so I'm going to measure to the frame in this case. So 7.5, and then my window is 37.5. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and measure the other window. Next, we're gonna measure the fireplace. So I do wanna measure how far it sticks out just to keep in mind for furniture placement. All right, so I have this one window to measure up. I'm not gonna actually measure the window over here because now that's entering into the kitchen, but this pretty much lines up with where that break point is, so I am gonna measure where this window ends. All right, now you don't necessarily need to take all of those measurements. Even if I'm doing it by hand, I just like to have as much detail as possible so that when I am thinking about furniture and I'm thinking about what is it facing, what's around it, I do like to have a really good idea of where the fireplace is, where the windows are. I mean, you could just do the length and width of the space and use that if you want to, but I do think if you want to do a really good space plan, even if you're doing it on a tablet or you're doing it by hand, taking as many measurements as you can doesn't hurt. All right, I have a couple tips here for you guys. So if you're working with existing furniture, you'll want to measure the furniture that you have. So one of the pieces that I do want to keep is my coffee table. I really love this coffee table. I've had it forever. It's old, rustic, and I don't care if it gets damaged. It's just one of those things that it looks better the more beaten up it gets. So I am going to go ahead and measure the coffee table because I do want to use that in, the redesign of the space. Now, I'm not going to be showing you guys exactly like the final product because I'm not going to be buying anything new right away, but I am starting to plan it. So this is a planning exercise. Sorry, it's not a before and after. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and measure the piece of furniture. And this is important if you're keeping your furniture and you just need to lay it out differently to actually measure your pieces. So when it comes to furniture layout, it's going to be easier for the way that we're doing it to actually measure up to the closest 6 inches. The reason for that is when we get into the grid planning, because I want this to be extremely user-friendly, we're going to be using each square as a foot. I will show you all the details in a second. So let's say we have this couch, you're measuring your couch, so we want to make sure we kind of, if it has an angle, measure that widest point. And this couch measures, actually it measures at 36 inches, which is perfect because that's 3 feet. So it's right on that line. Now let's say it was 32 inches. I would say for ease of drawing and hand drawing, just do it at the 36. So you're giving yourself a little bit of extra room around the couch. Try not to go smaller because a few inches here and there will add up in your space and things won't fit the way you want. So you're better to kind of overestimate than underestimate. So that's just a little tip when it comes to measuring your depth and then of course your lengths and widths. Heights don't really matter because we're not doing elevations. So, all right, so we've got everything measured up. Hopefully this works well. Phone, you guys, we're good. Okay, I hope. Okay, so I said I would mention some of the tools that you could use. So I'm gonna do everything on the tablet. It has a grid line option for you. So if you have, I think it's GoodNotes is what I have on here. I feel like iPads are pretty good. They have a lot of stuff on them, but I'm gonna be using the GoodNotes app and it's a notebook and it has a graph paper in it. So that's actually what I'm gonna use to work out this plan. Now you don't have to have an iPad to do that. We could use, so there are, I don't know how clear this is gonna come up. Grid paper, I feel like that's not clear. Grid paper, yeah. So this one's a little bit small. I think if I was to hand draw it on here, I'd probably use 2 squares as a foot. So each one is 6 inches, mostly just because it's so tiny. Usually they're a little bit bigger than this. So if you're just buying like a pad of graph paper, you're probably fine to use 1 square as 1 foot. So I guess I should start with that. So the point of using the grid paper is that we want to basically create a template so that when we're laying out our items, it actually is to scale. So by being to scale, it gives you a true sense of if it will fit in the space. So if I have each square as a foot and I have 15 foot 11, so I'm gonna do that at 15.6. I'd rather go tighter than bigger because, well, it's almost 16 feet. So for 1 inch, I think I would just do 16, okay? So we'll do 16. So then I would count 16 squares, and that's my 16 feet. So each square equals 1 foot. Or if you have a really weird, oddly small grid paper like this one is, maybe do every square as 6 inches, which 2 is a foot. So hopefully that's not too confusing. I'm trying to make it super simple, but the only grid paper I have is tiny. Okay, the other way to do it is, and now this is more time consuming, is to take some paper and a ruler. Now this is a scale, sorry. I literally couldn't find a regular ruler, but a ruler, paper, pencil, and draw a grid on it. And I would do, again, so 1/4 inch. Yes, every 1/4 of an inch would equal a foot. That's the easiest way to do it. So you would just draw basically what a grid system looks like. And what I would do, just as like a little trick, because if you're doing it by hand, you may end up having to like start over a few times, is use trace paper if you happen to have it. If not, do the grid on like a white paper in, you know, a black thick marker, and then do other paper over top. Even if it's paper on paper, you'll be able to probably see the black lines through it. So you could do, you know, different versions over top of the grid paper. You don't have to keep making the grid over and over because that part is tedious. So that's like the very, if you really don't have anything, you can do an actual, like, create your own grid. And you know, it doesn't even have to be to that scale. I find that's just easiest for most spaces, but really whatever size you choose to use, just each square is a foot. That's kind of the easiest, you know, method to follow. Okay, I'm not 100% sure how easy it is to see the boxes on this one. So hopefully you guys get the gist of what I'm doing. I'll try to zoom it in as much as I can. Okay, so I have a fresh sheet on my tablet, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the measurements that we just took of the overall space, and I'm gonna transfer them onto this in actually scaled version. So now precision is a lot more important. So we have 15 foot 5 inches. So we'll do 15.6. So 6 inches would be half a square. It's still fairly easy to get it quite accurate. So we'll do 15.6 across just to make life easy. 1 inch isn't really that big of a deal. All right, so I'm gonna use my line tool. So first things first, I gotta count. So I'm gonna put a little mark here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I should have my glasses on. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 is here, so we'll do halfway. So now I'll do my line just because it looks nicer. It straightens it out. There we go. So that is my 15.5. Now my length is 16 foot 11, so I'm just gonna do 17 because it's only 1 inch difference. So now I'm gonna count 17 feet. 17 squares, sorry, I'm going to count 17 squares, which is 17 feet on my tablet.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Okay, 17 is right here. So now I can just finish off, so I'll just go like this. I'm a little bit of a picky person, but I want it to be as accurate as I can. Okay. So there is my room. Doesn't look so big when it's on here, but that's the whole point of using the grid. If you find it's too small, you could use like every block is 6 inches and do it, you know, make it double the size to fit your page, to make it larger, just easier to see. That's not a problem at all. Whatever's easiest for you. I try to do 1 square a foot just to make counting easy for you, but you don't have to do it that way. You can do it whatever way is easiest for you to keep track of. So 6 inches, a foot, probably those two are the easiest. So now we've got our box of our room, which is basically this room here. We do know that we have an opening over here. This is measured, this is kind of a fake line, so we have to remember that there is no wall here, so I'll just write a note. No wall. This is just open. So this is a hallway. I find notes do sometimes help. And then I didn't measure exactly where this opening is, but basically we know that a part of this side is open as well. So the next thing I want to note, at least as close as I can to what we have, is the fireplace and the windows. So 60 is 5 feet. So I think what I'm going to do here is just note 5 feet out this way, because I know that that's where my window is, kind of. This is why it's good to have all these measurements. You just kind of want to figure out where some of these lines end up. And then the other side is, okay, so we'll just go out roughly 4 feet this way, just to, I want to make it easy. So 7.5 feet, so this is pretty easy. So we'll just do 7.5. We'll do 4.5. So that's as close as we can get it. I know, you're like, why did you take perfect measurements? But sorry, it's the designer in me. Okay, so 4 feet from here. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the edge of my window. And then this way we're going out 5. So 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Far out should I come? That's roughly our fireplace. And this actually kind of goes like that because it goes out a bit more, but I got to get my windows in first. I hope this isn't too confusing. Perfect. Anyways, I know that seems confusing, but my hearth actually comes out past the window, so I was just kind of noting that it's like about a foot more, just for planning purposes. Okay, so next I'm just going to quickly note, just in case, you know, you come back to this at a later time, you remember what the heck you put on here. Okay, so window, fireplace. So that is roughly our layout. And I know it's like, feels like a lot of work just to get to this point, but if you want to actually do your space plan in a way that is actually effective, you need to know where everything sits. Okay, so the next thing we know is that I have a coffee table that I want to reuse, and the coffee table is 31 by 47. So let's just do 2.5 squares for this. So we'll just do 2.5. It's close. Yeah, 36 is 3 squares. So we'll just say 4 squares. Okay, so let's draw it off to the side here. So basically what you want to do is, say you're searching for a particular sofa and you want to see if it fits if you're buying something new. If you're working with your existing, measure your existing and start laying it out, like drawing it, just like I did the coffee table. Now, if you're actually going out and buying something new, go on their website and get the dimensions, and then you can use those dimensions to create your little templates, which is why I love using a tablet, because you can just kind of like fix it really quickly without having to start all over again. And I have picked a bunch of items from Cornerstone Home Interiors, which I absolutely love that store. So I've actually decided I kind of like the scale and proportion for a potential layout of this space. I haven't decided yet if I want to do a sectional, which is definitely one of the thoughts, or if I want to do like 2 couches facing each other because of the fireplace being the central focal point. So I guess let's get into that. So there's 2 options I would see in this space as the designer. So I could do, and I'll use a different color here. I'll use yellow. So I could choose to make this my focal point. This is a solid wall. I could, you know, if they hadn't already put a hole in the fireplace area, I could have put a TV here. I could have had a console there. So I could have kind of arranged everything to face this way and make, although I don't love making a TV the focal point, I could have made this area the focal point and have this off to the side. So you almost have two focal points, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So you could have it this way, or I think the most natural way is to face the fireplace. So that's where I have to think about my placement of furniture. So to show you quickly what I'm thinking, and this is just based on, you know, kind of thoughts and ideas, and I haven't actually measured it out, is maybe potentially, because I know this is open here, so I do have extra space there, doing something where I have two couches and maybe like, oops, that's a terrible chair. And two chairs, something like this. That might be an idea of how I want to lay it out. And then I could do, you know, the area rug, something like this. So that's definitely an idea. The other idea would be potentially to kind of do what I have now, except larger. And now I have thought, actually, this would go further down. Something like that with the coffee table, which is kind of what I have now, but this would be much larger. The other thought is maybe I do get a new coffee table and I do like a chaise, like the three-sided one, and do like a circle, and then keep something over here because I don't think anything will work over there. Now the other option that I'm thinking is, you know, chair, maybe coffee table is going to look like a smiley face, and then maybe just a longer, you know, couch over here with or without a chaise. There's also those angled ones, so there's a few kind of options that we could look at. Okay, so that's how I think about it initially, is like, whatever am I kind of thinking of furniture placement, and then we got to figure out what fits. So because this space, I mean, it's a good size, but it's not massive. I definitely want to make sure that whatever sofas I'm thinking of is the right scale and proportion. So I'm looking at a two-seater, but it's quite large. So 7.4, so we'll do 7.5 squares this way. And then this way, 41. We will do 3.5 because we'll go a little bit larger. Straighten it out. And if you want to be real fancy, it's a couch. Okay, so one thing I like about the tablet is I can just copy this so I don't have to draw it twice. And then two chairs. Now, chairs that I'm thinking of, I think they're 24 by 30 something, so let's just double check. They're gorgeous, a little expensive, but sometimes you have to invest in pieces because you'll have them for a really long time. So 36 is what we'll do for the depth, which is 3 squares. So we're gonna do this at 3 squares for 36, and we'll just, even though it's a couple inches, I'm not too worried about it because it's a chair. Chairs are a little easier than couches, so we'll just do chair. Okay, so we're gonna have 2 chairs, 2 couches, and a coffee table, which is existing. All right, now let's place these on here. So this is what's lovely about this. So I can just take this. Okay, this thing is scaling on me, which is not what I want. So good thing I have an original. So next thing I need to think about is clearances. So 1, 2, 3. I kind of want 3 feet on this side. So I'm just going to use some marks to note 3 feet. It's a little bit more than 3 feet, but that's important. This is open and this is open. So I do know I have an island over here. You might need to draw that in, but I think I'm okay. And then this darn thing scaled a little bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, okay. Let's move you over because you're just gonna scale again and I need to get it right. Just kind of playing with where it would sit because I actually think this might be too big. The couch that I thought I was going to use doesn't actually fit, which is why we do this. So I'm gonna go out 2 feet from here. Want to keep this clear, that's what all these little dots are for. And then the new couch that I'm looking at is a little bit smaller, so it would be 7 squares by 3 squares. So I'm just going to draw it on here. So I want to leave about at least a foot. So this is, I've kind of centered it here. So I'm going to leave 6 inches plus a foot. So we'll do the edge of the couch here and then the edge of the couch here. That's enough room to walk around the coffee table. And then we got to think 7 squares. And this is kind of my edge line. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good, that works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then 3. It's nice. And yes, I do like to keep things off of the wall, so that is intentional. And this is exactly why we do space planning, because the couch that I really liked didn't even fit, which I totally thought it would, to be honest. Smaller couch, because the big one didn't fit. Sorry, it's a little wonky, but it's a hand drawing. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just needs to show scale. So here we have to remember that this is kind of like a hallway, but it is more of just an open area. The dining room is here. So I do have like a little bit of play with this area. Make sure I'm recording. So I'm good with my chairs, and I would want them to sit. So let's just do this. Sorry, these got a little unscaled. Okay. Remember, there's no wall here. But this is kind of our natural line. So with the smaller couch, and then the circle's hard, it would probably be about an 18-inch table. So if this is like a foot, it'd be, like half of that. But it's hard to do a circle, but that's okay. You can kind of guess a little bit. There is a little bit of guessing when it comes to hand drawing. And it's been a minute for me too, so. All right, so I like this. So there's a couple feet here. This might need to, in all honesty, I think this would work. I'm not unhappy with any of this. This might need to push down slightly, like when I had it, I felt this was too tight. We've got about 2 feet here, which is okay for clearance. I mean, I'd like 3, but it could be an intimate space. Also, if I push this kind of I guess that's not 100%. If I push this out a little bit this way, it would work just to give me a little bit more clearance here. It depends, I want to make sure that this still has flow and this is open, right? So there's a lot of space here and there's a lot of space here. So it's really just these entrance points that I would really, maybe have to fuss with a little bit. You could even push it in here a little bit, make it tighter with the table. But overall, this works. So this is a space plan. And I actually, this was a real space plan because I haven't done a space plan by hand in a very long time. I've always do it on AutoCAD. So even I thought, the couch that I just randomly picked to try and put in this space, something that I've had in my brain, but that's a spider. Are you kidding me? Look. Can you see him? He just landed. Seriously? What do I do with you now? Ah! Okay. We are not friends. Bye-bye. Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's my process to space planning, and I hope that was helpful. I've thought about doing this video for a really long time and really just trying to figure out how to present it. I feel like this was probably the easiest way. I hope it was the easiest way for you guys. I know maybe some of the measurements you don't need and you can totally ignore them if you don't. That's how I look at a space. I always look at all my elements because normally I would be laying this out in AutoCAD, let's be honest. But just to get to the point, the reality is I like to know where my big items are. So the fireplace, the windows, all that kind of stuff, just so it's important to know what's happening in this space when you actually go to lay out furniture. Now, my next video that I'm doing is actually an IKEA tour, seeing what's new from fall. But the reason I went to IKEA is because there's actually an L-shaped couch there. Now you're probably thinking, didn't you just say you're buying something from Cornerstone? Okay, here's the deal. I can give you a little inside information. I have a 5-year-old and they're messy. So, and I have a very old dog and he also has some issues these days. So a part of me really wants to get the couches that I love. But Cornerstone, although it's not the most expensive place in the world, it's also not the cheapest place in the world. So this is what I want, which is why I figured I'd do the space plan for what I want, because then I know it actually works. But the reality is I have to think about practicality. So I went to IKEA for the first time in 2 years and actually took a look at their sectional. So there is this sectional that I'm looking at, very similar to the layout I have now, except to the proper scale, which would essentially, you know, go in this space here and then keep a chair there. Whether it's that chair, I might get a nicer chair for that one spot. But that being said, it is something on my mind because I can wash the slip covers. So if you guys liked this style of video where I actually went through how to do a space plan, please hit the like button. Let me know that you enjoyed it, and then comment below. Let me know if there's something that I missed on this, if there's something else that I need to cover, if there's something that is still just really unclear, and I'll do a follow-up to this one. All right, guys, until next time, bye.